Uncle Andrew came with her, not because he wanted to see, but because he wanted to keep close to the children. There might be a chance of stealing their rings. But when he saw what Diggory was looking at, even he began to take an interest. It was a perfect little model of a lamppost, about 3 feet high, but lengthening and thickening in proportion. As they watched it, in fact, growing just as the trees had grown. "It's alive too. I mean, it's lit," said Diggory. And so it was. Though, of course, the brightness of the sun made the little flame in the lantern hard to see unless your shadow fell on it. "Remarkable, most remarkable," muttered Uncle Andrew. "Even I never dreamed of magic like this. We're in a world where everything, even a lamppost, comes to life and grows. Now, I wonder what sort of seed a lamppost grows from." Don't you see," said Diggory, "this is where the bar fell, the bar she tore off the lamppost at home. It sank into the ground and now it's coming up as a young lamppost. But not so very young now. It was as tall as Diggory while he said this." "That's it. Stupendous, stupendous," said Uncle Andrew, rubbing his hands harder than ever. "Ho, ho, they laughed at my magic. That fool of my sister of mine thinks I'm a lunatic. I wonder what they'll say now. I have discovered a world where everything is bursting with life and growth. Columbus, now they talk about Columbus, but what was America to this? The commercial possibilities of this country are unbounded. Bring a few old bits of scrap iron here, bury 'em, and up they come as brand new railway engines, battleships, anything you please. They'll cost nothing, and I can sell 'em full price in England. I shall be a millionaire. And the climate! I feel years younger already. I could run it as a health resort. A good sanatorium here might be worth 20,000 a year. Of course, I shall have to let a few people into the secret. The first thing is to get that brute shot." "You're just like the witch," said Polly. "All you think of is killing things." And then, as regards oneself," Uncle Andrew continued in a dreamy voice, "there's no knowing how long I might live if I settled here. And that's a big consideration when a fellow's turned 60. I shouldn't be surprised if I never grew a day older in this country. Stupendous, the land of youth." "Oh," cried Diggory. "The land of youth? Do you think it really is?" For of course he remembered what Aunt Letty had said to the lady who bought the grapes, and that sweet hope rushed back to him. "Uncle Andrew," he said, "do you think there's anything here that would cure Mother?" "What are you talking about?" said Uncle Andrew. "This isn't a chemist's shop. But as I was saying—" "You don't care twopence about her," said Diggory savagely. "I thought you might. After all, she's your sister as well as my mother. Well, no matter. I'm jolly well going to ask the lion himself if he can help me." And he turned and walked briskly away. Polly waited for a moment and then went after him. "Here, stop. Come back. The boy's gone mad," said Uncle Andrew. He followed the children at a cautious distance behind, for he didn't want to get too far from the green rings or too near the lion. In a few moments Diggory came to the edge of the wood, and there he stopped. The lion was singing still, but now the song had once more changed. It was more like what we would call a tune, but it was far wilder. It made you want to run and jump and climb. It made you want to shout. It made you want to rush at other people and either hug them or fight them. It made Diggory hot and red in the face. It had the same effect on Uncle Andrew, for Diggory could hear him saying, "Spirited girl, sir. It's a pity about her temper, but a damn fine woman all the same, a damn fine woman." But what the song did to the two humans was nothing compared to what it was doing to the country. Can you imagine a stretch of grassy land bubbling like water in a pot? For that is really the best description of what was happening. In all directions it was swelling into humps. There were very different sizes, some no bigger than molehills, but some as big as wheelbarrows, and two the size of cottages. and the humps moved and swelled till they burst. And then the crumbling earth poured out of them, and from each hump there came out an animal. The moles came out just as you might see a mole coming out in England. The dogs came out barking the moment their heads were free and struggling as you've seen them do when they're getting through a narrow hole in a hedge. The stags were the queerest things to watch, for of course the antlers came up a long time before the rest of them. And so at first Diggory thought they were trees. The frogs, who all came up near the river, went straight into it with a plop, plop and a loud croaking. The panthers and leopards and things of that sort sat down at once to wash off the loose earth from their hind quarters, and then stood up against the trees to sharpen their front claws. Showers of birds came out of the tree, butterflies fluttered, bees got to work on the flowers as if they hadn't a second to lose. But the greatest moment of all was when the biggest hump broke, like a small earthquake, and out came the sloping back, the large wise head, and the 4 baggy-trousered legs of an elephant. And now you could hardly hear the song of the lion. There was so much cawing, cooing, crowing, braying, neighing, baying, barking, lowing, bleating and trumpeting. And though Diggory could no longer hear the lion, he could still see it. It was so big and so bright that he couldn't take his eyes off it. The other animals didn't appear to be afraid of it. Indeed, at that very moment Diggory heard the sound of hooves from behind, and a second later the old cab horse trotted past him and joined the other beasts. The air had apparently suited him as well as it suited Uncle Andrew. He no longer looked like the poor old slave he'd been in London. He was picking up his feet and holding his head erect. And now, for the first time, the lion was quiet. He was going to and fro among the animals, and every now and then he would go up to 2 of them, always 2 at a time, and touch their noses with his. He would touch 2 beavers among all the beavers, 2 leopards among all the leopards, 1 stag and 1 deer among all the deer, and leave the rest. Some sorts of animals he passed over altogether, but the pairs which he had touched instantly left their own kinds and followed him. At last he stood still, and all the creatures whom he touched came and stood in a wide circle around him. The others whom he'd not touched began to wander away. Their noises faded gradually into the distance. The chosen beasts, who remained, were now utterly silent, all with their eyes fixed intently on the lion. The cat-like ones gave the occasional twitch of a tail, but otherwise all was still. For the first time that day, there was complete silence, except for the noise of running water. Diggory's heart beat wildly. He knew something very solemn was going to be done. He'd not forgotten about his mother, but he knew jolly well that even for her he couldn't interrupt a thing like this. The lion, whose eyes never blinked, stared at the animals as hard as if he were going to burn them up with his mere stare. And gradually a change came over them. The smaller ones, the rabbits and moles and such like, grew a good deal larger. The big ones, you noticed it most with the elephants, grew a little smaller. Many animals sat up on their hind legs. Most put their heads on one side as if they were trying very hard to understand. The lion opened his mouth, but no sound came from it. He was breathing out a long, warm breath. It seemed to sway all the beasts as the wind sways a line of trees. Far overhead, beyond the veil of blue sky which hid them, the stars sang again, a pure, cold, difficult music. Then there was a swift flash like fire, but it burnt nobody, either from the sky or from the lion itself, and every drop of blood tingled in the children's bodies, and the deepest wildest voice they'd ever heard was saying, "Narnia, Narnia, Narnia. Awake, love, think, speak. Be walking trees, be talking beasts, be divine waters."